I wanted to quickly add to the last clip I just did on shafts and getting fit, to give you 10 quick points to take with you and to think through and be ready with, and to share with the fitter should you decide to go there. Reflect on, jot down, and share with the fitter, whether he or she asks for it or not. It'll help him determine what to look at in your swing, which shafts to try out, and perhaps even which heads, whether it be it irons or drivers or hybrids or woods that you're looking at, with some of these specific things in mind. The first is, which ball are you using? Which ball do you regularly use on your course or you take with you on your travels? It's important to identify for the fitter the ball that you commonly use, whether it's a 2-piece, 3-piece, 4-piece ball, perhaps the specific brand and model, because they will react differently even on the same clubs. But it will also give the fitter an idea whether that is something that is worth looking at in relation to other things that you've identified that I'm coming to. So which ball are you focused on and are you using primarily? My recommendation always is pick a ball, stick to it, get used to it, learn its characteristics, learn how you hit that particular ball, rather than chop and change a lot or try different balls in the same round unless you're testing them. The second, are you focused on trying to get more distance, or are you trying to hit the ball and trajectory straighter? So what is your primary goal if you have a trade-off? Is it more distance versus dispersion, or is it less dispersion and straighter even at the expense of some distance? It's important in your mind to identify that. It obviously makes a difference which courses you are playing on, and of course your particular swing and abilities. Identifying the trade-off between those two, giving some weighting. If you were to say, I'm looking to hit it straighter, sort of 60-70% weighting relative to distance, or I'd like to get it further irrespective of whether I can't get it too straight, because it just gets me into being able to reach with the second shot a lot easier, even if it's in the light rough or the rough. So what is your primary emphasis? Third, do you have a consistent shape that you would like to see, or do you want to be able to shape the ball different ways? Do you want to be able to do a fade and a draw, or you're quite happy to have it straight or have it slightly fade or have it slightly draw every time? If you feel comfortable in one particular type of trajectory and shot, identify that and explain that. If you want to be able to vary your types of shots and you know how to do that, then you should also identify that, because that may well affect the specific clubs and brands that are recommended, the specific model within a particular brand, and of course similarly the shaft characteristics. So is it a particular shape, or do you want a variety of shapes? Fourth, what is the type of course you primarily play on, or do you play at lots of different types of courses and lots of different styles of courses? You'll have seen one of the clips I've done on types of courses. So you play links sometimes, and then parkland another time, and heathland, and vary it a lot? Or do you play on a particular home course which has a particular set of characteristics and style of play, length, what is the par of the of the course. Is it hilly? Is it flat? Are the fairways wide or narrow? Important to identify the characteristics, which includes, is it very wet a lot, and in the bunkers tend to be wet and harder or very soft. Important to identify these characteristics to your fitter, to say, I want to be able to play better on this type of course, or I want to be able to take my shot and my game to a variety of types of courses because I vary the types of courses I play. So what is the type of course that you want the fitter to think about when identifying the different aspects for you? Somewhat in relation to that, what is your set makeup? So if you're playing a particular course and you know that you've got a set makeup, let's take an example. You use a driver of the tee, you don't possess a 3-wood, but you have a 5-wood off the fairway, alternatively a 3 hybrid of the fairway. Maybe you have another hybrid, maybe you start your iron set at 6 or 7, or even 8 if you've got more hybrids. Identify that set makeup to the fitter, and that includes, do you have 2 wedges, 3 wedges, or only 1 wedge? Maybe you go into your iron set has a gap wedge, and therefore you only have a specialist multiple purpose wedge of 58 degree perhaps, wedge that you use in the sand for lobbing over a bunker onto a green. Important to identify the set makeup because that will significantly affect how the fitter thinks about you and your game, also your needs, and perhaps even sets and brands. Some iron sets, although increasingly they are much more varied than before, including combo sets. You have to buy a full set from 5 to pitching wedge. You may not find that's necessary for you. So it's important to identify these aspects for the fitter, because it may be that you need to be fit slightly differently for the hybrid than for the iron and for the driver. What is your set makeup? Just add that if you find that you walk the course a lot, you're more senior, you want to carry half a set, you take every other iron, so you want to be able to vary your shots on a 9 iron because your next one is your gap wedge, and the one before that is your 7 iron, not your 8 iron. So for each iron you want to be able to, or each hybrid you want to be able to hit it longer and higher or shorter and lower. Identify that aspect as well, because that's going to be very important to get you fit right. Are you taking lessons? Is your handicap coming down? Or are you practicing a lot? What tools are you using? Video feedback, armbands, the hanger, Live View Pro. I've done some clips on some of these. More will follow. Do you know your distances? If so, identify your average differences for some of the clubs to your fitter. What if you are taking lessons or you are improving yourself through whatever means, YouTube clips, tips and tricks that you're following? Identify those. If your handicap is beginning to come down, you're working to actually bring it down even more. Specify that. Specify your target, because that might affect not only the clubs that you currently fit in, but perhaps the next growth set that you want to move into even immediately, in order to get you already starting to focus on that improvement. In some ways, the more difficult the irons to hit, and I'm not talking about blades here, the less they hide your bad strokes and shots. So if you're really trying to improve, having something that you can slightly grow into, not a huge jump, but maybe going from game improvement to sort of player's distance iron, for example, might be something to identify for the fitter. And it may be that you just, have 1 or 2 at the top end of the player's distance initially, and you build a set later as you improve in your other shots. So where are you going with your game? And where do you want to go with your game, and what are you prepared to put in to get there? What is the weakest area of your game, or weakest part of your game? Is your driver that you're finding it very hard? Maybe therefore you skip thinking about the driver and use the 3-wood off the tee. In some cases even a 2 or 3 hybrid off the tee. Is it your short game that's a problem, and therefore that's where you need the most help with your clubs, and that's where you're going to focus most of your game improvement on? What is the weakest part of your game, and what is your strongest part of the game? Clearly, if you've got a strong part of the game and you can demonstrate that in the fitting, including, let's say, your drive is a strong part of the game, and you show a consistent drive as you hit the ball, and they take the measurements, they know, okay, that's your average drive, you're doing a consistent shot, let's just look at the trajectory. And then what's the next from there? What's the shot from there for your course? So that's maybe the second place to focus. But it could be it's your short game, in which case the top end of your bag and your wedges are where you want more focus in having the clubs fit better. Important equally to identify what is your common miss. So in the various rounds you've been having, what is the one big miss you notice most? Is it that you tend to push your 7-iron or 6-iron out, to, push it out or slice it, whereas you hit some of the other clubs better? So maybe it's the difficulty of that slightly higher iron, or it could be a 5 or 4 iron, or it could be that your common miss is with your hybrid, in which case maybe you want to try, and you do well with your irons, 6-7 irons, maybe it's worth rethinking and getting a 5-iron instead of one of the hybrids, because you find that you're hitting your irons better. So what is your common miss that you also want to address? So it's slightly different to the weakest part of the game. It's where you're finding the hardest to get the most accuracy, whether it's a distance issue, whether it's the stopping on the green, whether it's the closeness to a particular position that you find that you keep trying to do, and no matter which club it is, you're finding it difficulty. Maybe there's a club out there for you that can help you with that, or maybe what you've identified is an area of the game that you need more help with in terms of improving through lessons or through improved technique. How important is looks and feel to you? It's one thing to say, I want it to look really thin top line, I want it to feel soft and buttery, but then you find that those clubs are much harder to hit, you're losing distance, you're not getting the accuracy you want, in which case, a slightly thicker top line, a slightly bulkier, partly game improvement club might in fact suit you better, even though the looks and feel are not perfect. But if the looks and feel are so important to you, then you need to identify that, and maybe given the technology these days and the huge range that is out there and that is increasingly being released, range of irons that, for example, Mizuno brought out in the new JPX 921 line, or the new TaylorMade line that has just come out, actually gives you some variety. Maybe there's a combination set out there where at the top end of the bag you can have that great look and feel, but in the middle part of your bag where you'll struggle the most, particularly from a distance and accuracy point of view, you may need a club that gives you a bit more help, and increasingly you can find some combination that fits well with that. So it's very important to identify that aspect. Next, what is the go-to shot that you have or want, and think about the hard or hardest hole on your course or on several of the courses that you play. What's a go-to shot that you're trying to get there, and you want a club that really helps you with that go-to shot, or you've got a club that helps you with that go-to shot. It may be good for the fitter to be aware of what works for you, because as he thinks about other parts of the bag, particularly next to those clubs, he might say, oh, maybe we could tweak the loft on this other one slightly to give you more comfort with a slightly longer shot. Same go-to shot, but give you more distance, or the other way around. Same go-to shot, but less distance, depending on your course. So what is the challenge you have on your hardest hole that you want help with, or you want the fitter to think about when they're looking at the clubs for you, or the shafts for you, or the lofts, or the bounce, as the case may be, if it's the wedges in particular. Finally, what's your budget? You're going to stick with custom option shafts because clubs are already expensive. Some manufacturers really give you a lot of stock options, lighter shafts, medium shafts, more flexible shafts, different kick points. Have a look at the recent clip that this is a follow-on to, in which case that's fine. If you start thinking of aftermarket shafts, and maybe the fitter says, look, to address these two problems, I think you should look at aftermarket shaft. Be aware that aftermarket shafts can add a significant amount to your cost, and if that's worth it for you, or you can afford it, then it may be worth thinking about. Just for example, recently when I was looking at some new irons, the Fujikura Ventus Blue counterbalance shaft was something that worked very well for me, but for the half set that I was looking at, there was an additional cost of $200 per shaft. So you really need to think it through before you venture into the aftermarket side, unless of course you're a professional, or you are a very low handicap, or you of course can afford it and you'd like to get that greater accuracy and spend the money for it. There are a lot of options out there. They're not all at the top end. There are some that would be slightly more inexpensive, but as I've said, there are many manufacturers today give you some really good stock options, and it doesn't mean the stock one on their stock club that's on the shelf, but you could identify different shaft options for the same club for the same price. I hope these 10 quick things that you think about help you be ready for a fitting and help you identify a better set of makeup for you and improve your golf game, help you enjoy it a lot more, which is the purpose at the end of the day, and give you a lot more satisfaction. Do subscribe, put the notifications on, lots more to follow. I'll be coming to some interesting tips shortly. Happy golfing. See you on the flip side.